I think we should just pick a card, right?
Yeah, they're here. Let's see what's in there.
Okay, so yeah,
okay, you go first.
This one. All right. So, how important is hosting/infrastructure for a successful launch of a new game?
Well, it's an easy answer. It's extremely important.
Yeah.
But it's not always seen that way by the companies who make the games, develop the games, or with independent studios. It can be an afterthought, and that's a large risk for your game.
Because the games will not make it through the launch basically without any downtime.
Exactly.
Right?
So you
launch. Do you think that's already? I sometimes have the feeling that it's accepted. It's normal. It happens so often that people kind of expect it when the launch is there.
Yeah.
Now nobody likes it, but people they know how to act on it. They just quit the game and try again the next day maybe.
They expect 1,000 plus player queues.
Yeah, exactly.
It's in a way disappointing that the players already think that it's normal that the launch might not go well.
Yeah.
And they are actually positively surprised if it goes well.
Okay.
But the game studio, the game makers, I mean, it's still your first impression. So
yes.
If you can spend a little bit more time thinking about what you're going to do and prevent that, then you already won the first battle.
Exactly.
But you need to think a little bit outside the box to be able to have something which can scale for your game if it's very successful. Or if it's not a success, that you don't go bankrupt with whatever you've committed.
I think that's even more important.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but it's also not as easy to fix it, because of course you never really know what the game is going to do.
Yeah.
It could be a success, but then even if you predict it's going to be a success, it could be a huge success.
You don't have influence on that success nowadays. I mean, not to the amount of control you had like a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays it could just be a few Twitch streamers starting to play your game and hyping it to the moon, and then you're suddenly faced with the question like, how am I going to keep scaling this? How am I not going to die because of my own success?
Yes, exactly.
And those are questions that were not relevant a few years ago when you were still maybe working on your game, but they're definitely relevant now. So yeah, there's many more cards in the box, so let me get the next one. So what hosting infrastructure options are available to game studios?
Of course, to start with, you got bare metal. You can simply get a bare metal provider.
Mm-hmm.
Well, IGD is one of them, and host your game there. Then you have like Google Cloud, AWS, so the cloud providers. It's also a very popular choice. I think those are the two main hosting facilities you have, and then you could also go for something like there are various actor models that you can get in a hosted variant. I know Azure has Fabric, I believe it's called, and there are some others, I think. Yeah, so I think those are the three main. So either you have like a cloud solution that can scale. That's the good news about it. Bare metal is usually a little bit faster, or a lot faster, but it doesn't really scale. Not in the way that the cloud providers scale. And then there's more the software solution, which basically digs into your architecture. You have to build your game according to the framework you will be using, and the framework will scale it for you.
Exactly. So
it's very invasive.
So yeah, there's the bare metals, there's the hyperscalers, and there's the platforms, which would take care of your scaling and all the magic behind it. So they take away a lot of worries.
Yeah.
The greatest marketing trick of this century is the large cloud providers telling everyone that you can scale indefinitely, infinitely at the hyperscalers. When talking about the benefits and the negatives, if your game is large enough, or if you're as a platform service, if you're providing service to multiple games, you will always run into the problem that even with the cloud providers, you suddenly start playing the capacity management game, quota games, negotiation commitments, negotiating how much you're going to spend with them for the next 5 years.
Yes.
Just like you were previously when you were dealing with data centers. But that's not something they tell you in the marketing.
No.
And that's why I think that's the strength of platforms such as yours and ours, which take away that those worries for the game studios and game developers.
Well, virtually infinitely.
It depends on the solution.
Yeah.
I think the cloud providers we mentioned, they generally also have their own solution tailored for game, but then you're stuck with that single provider, and if that provider is sold out or has other problems, then you're stuck.
Yeah.
So the main point is that you need to find and use a platform which makes use of multiple providers in the backend.
Yes, exactly.
So your game can always scale and always grow independently. So you're not reliant on a single provider somewhere in the backend causing you problems.
Yeah.
And that's the world we're in now.
At some point, it's going to be like things are going to have their own economy. It's going to be more like a Second Life, only without the sex. Basically.
Yeah, exactly. It's like what they call
better done
nowadays.
They call it
live games or games as a service, where
or metaverse, or there are a couple of very trendy hip buzzwords for them.
Basically, their expectation is when they develop and push out a new game that they can keep making money of it for many years after it's released by microtransactions, loot boxes, to name like a controversial topic. But to be successful there, your game needs to be up, your game needs to be available, your game needs to always support the player, so the player doesn't get frustrated and goes to play another game and spend his money on that other game instead of you. Yeah. I think at your side as well, you make it as easy as possible for the clients to use you.
There was one interesting angle for looking was that I think if you have something like Azure Service Fabric, you can build a game with that infinitely scales.
Yeah.
And it's great, right? And you can even deploy to production and it will automatically roll back. That's one. I saw a really impressive presentation about that. But if you do that, your entire game is being vendor locked in, not only the hosting.
It's 100% Azure, and you're right. Also with like not just the server side, you will need to make many modifications in your game.
Yes.
Which also talk to those Azure services to make it work.
And there you also have to use a .NET framework.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. A lot of people do that, but if you want to use something else, you simply can't do that. And with that comes all the tooling that you also need. That comes with the language in this case. Yeah. Like if you would do C#, you need to have Visual Studio. You need to have a subscription for all your employees. You need to have the course and everything. So it's a little beyond vendor locking your hosting. But hosting vendor lock-in is it's a little easier to fix, because hosting is basically start a server, stop a server.
Yeah.
And I'm simplifying it incredibly now, but that's what it comes down to. But that is something you can solve. But as soon as you're having vendor lock-in in the platform, then you're basically you cannot in a realistic way get over that, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially when your game is out in production. You've scaled down your teams, and if you then have to make a whole change when you're completely locked into one of the hyperscalers environments, including with your deployment pipelines, with your game servers, but also your game clients.
Yes.
It's such a nightmare that it's in practice generally not possible unless it comes down from the top and they say, okay, here are the resources again, make the change.
Yeah, but you literally have to
rewrite the whole part of your stack.
No, and now we were talking about Azure Service Fabric, which is great technology, but it has a lot of lock-in. But the same thing could be said for AWS.
Yeah, with GameLift or with the Google Cloud.
I know that Google Cloud has a really great dashboard thing. It's great, but you need to be on Google Cloud in order to use it in a sensible way. So it's very easy to get locked into one vendor, because if you are developing a game, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You tend to go for the fastest solution, and that is very often one that the vendor provides. And on top of that comes a lot of other stuff from the same vendor.
Exactly, it's in their interest to provide as much locking as possible, and make it as much difficult as possible for you to change.
Yeah.
And that's also the main difference with our platforms, where it is it's very easy to start for a game studio, but if they wish to make a change later, it's not so difficult. I mean, yes, they might have to change some things regarding how they deploy their resources for servers, and maybe some integrations with how they deploy their pipeline. But they're free to pick and integrate another platform. But there's little reason for them to do so, because you provide scaling with multiple providers at the back end. You take care of all the worries. So there's little reason to, unless your platform is completely down, not performing. Whereas with with a game client, you're never going to have a discussion saying with them, okay, you're using our platform. Yeah, now I want you to commit for 5 years and spend literally this amount of money with us, or we're not going to let you use our platform anymore. Whereas with a cloud provider, if you're locked in completely all the way, give away the key for your decision. You cannot change anymore. And then, even though you're spending maybe, let's say, 50 million for a game per year, but they know you cannot change. So you're not going to get the discount.
You have less flexibility.
Yes.
And that's the thing you need in order to do at least a successful launch, but also to respond to an ever-changing market. And especially now, the world is completely changing. So you want that flexibility. I think, Okay. It says, with so many available options, how does one pinpoint the right one to use?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned before, it kind of depends on the business case of your game. It depends also, like, where is your game going to get released? If it's going to be a worldwide global release, or just going to start in the US or in Europe, because that choice restricts and opens up different options that you can use. So as we mentioned before, there's generally three options. You can go directly with a hyperscaler, you can go traditional with data centers and go full bare metal, or you go with a platform and there you go hybrid, and in the end your game might be running on multiple hyperscalers and bare metal providers in the back end. But what is sometimes forgotten is the hyperscalers we talk about are not present everywhere. Especially if you go towards countries such like Russia, or look at Southeast Asia, or Latin America, or even South Africa. Also the Middle East, I can keep going. There's a very mixed amount of where they are present and where they're not present. So if you talk about option one, you really need to take that into consideration, because games are not local to just US or Europe anymore, especially if you want to earn money from your gamers playing your game. So the first thing is look at where in the world your game is going to run and which party can provide you that. And I think 9 out of 10 cases you will end up with platforms such as us. You can go really deep into that, and you can put a lot of resources in researching that. But you could also go with platforms who have already done all the work for you, and that's where you and I come in.
And then there's also the mobile thing. If you would have a mobile game, it would be ideal if all of the players are on the same network. With 5G and edge networking, that's something that is becoming very real. If you would be hosting a game, like you could host your game within the Vodafone network, within the Vodafone edge basically, and that will give you really low latency between and a really good connection between all the people that have Vodafone, and then you could do the same thing for any other provider, for instance. That could also be a choice. It also depends if you are developing a mobile game or a non-mobile game, like a PC game or something like that. But I always have the feeling that it's not the same for every game. It's basically you should be able to identify, to categorize a workload. So one of the attributes you could give it is like this is low latency is important. Maybe pricing is important. One game will make more money than the other game. You could even argue that if you have a paid version, that might give you better performance. I don't see why that wouldn't be possible. So you have all these attributes that make a game important, and based on those attributes, you should be able to make a decision, I think. And if I would be developing a game, I would basically split it in little pieces and put attributes on those little pieces. Like if you were downloading artifacts, you could do that from the other side of the world, because downloading an artifact is like a one-time thing. It's not gonna take a lot of time. But then again, if you would be in a fight, you need low latency for that. So that could be a process running, I don't know, in the edge of where your phone is connected to. So yeah, I think, but it's a difficult decision.
Yeah.
Or difficult. It's complicated. It's like you have a lot of variables. It's not as easy as picking the first one that shows up in your search results.
Definitely agree. That's also one of the pitfalls that a choice is made without taking everything into account.
Yeah.
And then, as we mentioned before, you suddenly find yourself stuck in a situation you cannot get out of. And
also, I think gaming is gaming is one of the industries where being better technically can make a difference between a success or not a success. Like if you're hosting a website and it's the latency is 30 milliseconds or it's 40, nobody cares.
Oh.
When it gets to a second, maybe people start complaining. But even then, there are a lot of people that say that your sales will drop when it goes above 300. All right, but that's 300 milliseconds. And now we're talking about gaming. If it's 40, that's a lot for shooters. And if it's like 100, the game is basically unplayable. So all this investment you did, it's a lot of money that goes in there, a lot of years in developing. You can basically just throw your game away if the latency is too high.
Yeah, it basically means that whole countries might not be able to even play your game, even though it might be for sale.
You're missing out on an entire market.
You're missing out on a lot of market.
Yeah.
And also, what you mentioned, latency. For shooters, it's crucial.
Yeah.
But especially now we're getting to a point where there's also some streaming going on, and maybe in the future more cloud-based streaming or hybrid streaming, so where parts of the game are streamed and parts are on the local computer. You need to be even lower latency than before. You need to be sub 30 milliseconds, or it's not going to be able to keep up, especially if you're trying to stream 8K to watch your computer. It needs a lot of processing power.
Yeah. Well, there are some locations that might have a little, some parts of the world just have their network is less good. So that won't be entirely consistent with, let's say, Europe, which is a really good coverage of network. But it's pretty much, the consistency is also in the way you use it. So if you have one API that you can use for any part of the world, basically, and also any kind of hosting provider, so this is Edge, bare metal, cloud, you name it, then that's also consistent. And also, of course, if you were hosting on Google Cloud or IGD maybe, it's the same interface towards it. So in that sense, it's absolutely consistent. As for the location in the world, you're always dependent on the region where you're at, on the physical things you have, on the infrastructure. Yeah.
I also see why platform like ours can do this probably better than if you would go with a single provider directly. As you mentioned, you would have a single API to talk to, and platform then arranges all the API calls and actions with different providers behind the platform, which can be cloud providers, other bare metal providers, you name it. That's one key thing, to be able to have the service available as close to the players as possible. Yeah. In Europe, with the internet infrastructure, I totally agree. You can maybe serve all of Europe with 2 locations. But if you're looking at even like at the US, there's a big difference between Central, East Coast, and West Coast. And if you look at the Middle East or Asia, with how these countries are interconnected, you need a lot more locations to be able to offer the same quality. And in my opinion, that's only possible if you use a platform service, which is not locked into a single provider of capacity.
When you say quality, you could be talking about latency, of course,
Yeah.
but quality can also be the price. If latency is not an issue, some games latency is not important at all, and in that case, price would be a factor for quality. And then if you go to Europe, you could still have a better hosting location, better quality, but then in terms of pricing, or maybe it's maybe you need GPU or something like that.
Yeah.
Or anything.
Yeah, it also depends on the needs of the game.
Yeah.
And I definitely agree that price can also be a very important factor. But it's also another reason why I think a platform service has an advantage, because you can play in the backend with multiple suppliers of capacity.
You can even experiment with
and experiment them and see which one works best. Maybe some might be cheaper.
Yeah.
But you might first think in terms of performance it might be not so good, but you can test it because it's integrated in the platform. And you have the freedom to do it.
Or maybe you want to have a maybe pricing is important. Pricing is always important, by the way. But maybe pricing is your main reason to pick a specific location in a specific area. But then when you have a tournament in that same area, you want to spend a little more just to be sure that all your players.
Tournament goes well. Yeah.
So you can even shift that on a day-to-day basis or hour-to-hour, basically on every time you start a match. The thing that is also consistent, if you use a platform, is that your distribution is basically solved. The distribution is usually another. It's the afterthought after the afterthoughts. Hosting is one thing, but then you also need to distribute it. Depending on your game, your binaries can be
very big as well.
Yeah, like 20 gigabytes is very not very common, but it's you see it. So the distribution is also something that is absolutely consistent around the world and also across providers, and that's something to moving a lot of terabytes or gigabytes can be very expensive.
Yeah, you make a very good point there. I didn't initially think about that, but let's say as a game studio and you make your own bucket of providers. It could be 10. But then you need to deploy your game on your patch. You need to work with all 10 providers individually to upload your builds, get everything patched, have different speeds, different contacts, different support teams. In the meantime, your testers are waiting for the new build to be deployed so they can actually test the game. Whereas if you work with a platform that takes care of everything behind that, you just upload your build to the platform, and the platform will take care of the distribution and can do it in a predictable way because they automated everything in the backend.
Yeah.
That's a very strong value.
And it's also, of course, billing, which is it's just
one negotiation, one billing.
Yeah, and then it's metrics, and then it's basically everything that has something to do with hosting is completely the same for any platform. If you have a proper platform.
So if you look at it, you basically have all the advantages of working with a single provider by using a platform, without the login if you were working with a provider directly without a platform.
Yeah, exactly. Then you're able to shift that. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that cost is definitely an important part. Probably one of the most important parts for game companies to decide where to host. But you also mentioned that, let's say when there's a tournament, you want to make sure everything works right, because that's a very important part of your game. It will get streamed to have a large audience, and of course in a competitive game, people want to make sure it works. So by using a platform, you can then make a choice to optimize based on latency. Take the Middle East, for example, where it's a very fragmented ecosystem in terms of connectivity. A lot of the connectivity between countries goes through Europe. So if you use a single cloud provider there, you can observe the neighboring countries for a competition match properly. So then you can say, okay, I want to pick a party there which does have the connections, which might be a little bit more expensive, but you have the total freedom to make these kind of decisions when using a platform. If you wish to optimize for latency, a platform is definitely the way to go.
So tell me about coping with a large volume of players in a short period of time, like when a game launches and becomes very popular in a short time.
Yeah, that's probably the most difficult situation you can be in as a game developer. Well, if you're one responsible for the operational part of the game, I mean, the marketing guys will love it if the game sells a lot more than expected.
Yeah.
But if you're dealing with the infrastructure, that's always the most difficult situation to be in. How to deal with a success which is far greater than you anticipated. I'm thinking back, like maybe a recent example with Fall Guys. It was a lot more successful than they thought it would be. So in the first couple of days, you had quite a bit of issues trying to play that game. And then I'm sure those guys spend a lot of time to make sure to implement the right scaling solutions and the right technologies to be able to support the rest of the launch in a very good fashion. I mean, as we also saw, the problems went away very quickly as well.
Yeah.
The right answers, of course, make sure you have implemented your solution, your platform, beforehand, before the game launches, so it's not an afterthought, to make sure that you are ready if your game proves to be a lot more successful than you think.
Yeah.
And also, that doesn't mean, in the traditional sense, that, okay, let's commit 1,000 servers at Dell extra for our data centers. No, it means using a platform where you can, on demand, if it's needed, keep on scaling as much as you need for your game to provide enough room for your players.
Yeah, because you're never going to know upfront how successful it's going to be. And it's a little bit of a dogma, I think, what a dogma is. So you want it to be successful, but not too successful.
Yeah.
Because then you want the best way, I think, to launch a game is to smear it out a little bit. Usually you see a peak, and then you see a very big drop. So, and that's kind of difficult, because you're not going to buy all this extra, or reserve all this extra capacity only for the peak.
Exactly.
Because that's a waste. If you need to reserve that capacity for a year, then you only do it for the peak. It doesn't really make sense. So you only need a little bit of, you need a lot of extra capacity for a very short period of time, and then it will stabilize a little bit. And when it's stabilized, that's the actual capacity that you need.
That's where you can predict and plan for commitments and longer.
Well, then sometimes it goes up. So there are still peaks from time to time.
Like a new DLC or new content, and then you suddenly get a whole peak again.
Or Corona.
Yeah. Or you get
also a big peak.
Some Twitch influencers who suddenly start playing your game, and just think about Among Us. It was out for a very long time, and then out of nowhere, everyone was playing it.
So you're saying that those peaks can come from anywhere.
Let's see the next question. Can you share an example of a successful game launch? I mean, what made it successful? How did the hosting infrastructure, the platform add the value?
Yeah, okay. So, most of them, I know one, I think Rocket League was pretty successful. It was not too long ago. Yeah, and I think there was no real problems with the launch of that game. And,
that's interesting. Shameless plug, but we host that. And
oh, you did that?
Yeah,
that's good.
And recently they released the tournament modes, and that's a very good example of very temporary capacity needed only just for a tournament. Okay. And when the tournament is not running, you don't need the capacity anymore.
Okay, so they requested that extra capacity.
Yeah,
for the tournament. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then they let the scale depending on needed. It was a combination that we suddenly need to provide that many thousand player slots for a set amount of time, and we provision that on whatever there is room for on the bare metals and on cloud.
Okay.
And if it's when the tournament is over, it gets scaled down again.
Yeah, sure, because if it's there for nothing.
So the advantage for them is they only pay for that small amount of time the tournament runs every few hours, and then they don't have to have all the capacity online all the time.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
The question is, how fast is the onboarding process for new clients?
Okay, I think the question is regarding to our platforms, and it's very important that it's quick and effortless for the customer, for the game developer, to integrate a platform, preferably within minutes. Of course, if you need to implement SDK, you need to make some modifications to your game server, in case your game is allocation based. But in that case, it should be a matter of hours and not take you weeks or months. So for a platform, it's very important that you make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, I think just with us, it's easy to start, it's easy to stop also with us, by the way. basically it's well, you have to make a few API calls that you have to integrate in your own software or in your matchmaker. Even though we have integrations with matchmakers, so to make the onboarding with the matchmaker or the integration with the matchmaker also as a product. So basically, it's setting up the distribution, implementing the API calls. That's it. Basically, most clients do it within a week.
Yeah.
And some of them within 2 days. Maybe one of them in a day, but not that long.
No, I think that's also just shows the value of having good SDKs available for your platform, good guides, examples. So developers can implement it. They even when you have an SDK, they can see what it does. There's no surprises there.
Yeah.
I mean, it also significantly raises the barrier for the competition. If the competition doesn't have easy developer tools, I mean, they're not going to spend a week on them if they can do it at your platform in a day.
Yeah. Do you also do hand-holding?
Yes, for some clients definitely. So when we talk to new clients, we try to figure out how much hand-holding they would need. Some clients have a mindset, they want to build everything their own. They want to build their own dashboards, they want to create their own Grafana and own monitoring, they have their own log stacks. So they just need a pointer how to create an API key with us and then ingest all the data, and they will do everything themselves.
Okay.
Usually it's the productions which have more resources, which tend to be like that.
Yeah.
But then we have the game developers who might be a small team, and they initially are looking for some guidance. We also see that hosting is often an afterthought. So if you can give them good advice and explain to them also what we explained in this video session today, why it's important to think about certain aspects, we see that they appreciate that a lot.
Yeah.
And even though it might steer some of their business away to other platforms or other providers, because maybe in some region that is a better choice, but we believe in informing them properly so they can make the best choice for the game.
Yeah, so you're really helping the game to be a successful launch, basically.
Yeah, that's the whole goal.
Yeah, we try to do the same thing, and we also have different levels of onboarding. So it's kind of what you're saying. We have SDKs, we have an API, and there are some prefabricated things that our clients can use. Also integrations. If they don't want to use our integrations or our SDK or whatever, they can also do it themselves, and we're happy to help them with that. So it's up to them on what level they want to integrate. I think that's very strong, because then you can serve a bigger market, basically.
Yeah, and again, you give them the freedom to use as much or as little of the platform and of the support as they wish to.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Okay. How does working with a young, flexible company, Gameye, give advantages, and what are the advantages of working with an established company like ICD.net?
Yeah, or maybe even Ubisoft. That's
Ubisoft.
really established.
Yes. Sometimes I do not realize the fact that we are an established company, because sometimes we also feel like we're still starting up in terms of pace, in terms of development, in terms of flexibility.
Yes.
But if I would look what the main advantages I see with working with a young company at Gameye is exactly that: the flexibility, the ability to execute, the ability to think with clients and their needs, and to speak with real people, and not have to wait for months to get an answer on a direction. Or I feel with smaller companies, they are a lot more open to think with their customers and also explore new ideas.
Yeah, I think that. Well, to start, I think you are an established company. I think we walked into this office 3 years ago for the first time.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
kind of looked up to you then. Still do a little bit, by the way. No, so and the thing is that I think if you're a more established brand or a company, it brings a lot of trust to the table. So people trust I3D because you have a number of successes already.
The track record.
You have a good track record.
I agree that's something.
Big game.
Sometimes we forget that, but being able to show that track record when walking into a new game studio and being to explain that, Right. That's probably one of the differences between a young and an established company.
And especially if you have Ubisoft backing you up, then you have even more trust. So I think that's a really big advantage, and I think we can be extremely flexible, and I think that's an advantage. Another advantage that we have, I think, is that one of our clients said it recently to us. They said they could go with company X, not gonna name them, but they wanted to go with us because they were absolutely sure that if they would go with us, we would give them our blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, full attention.
Yeah, full attention, because for us, every client is a important client, and at some bigger companies, if you're just one of the many clients, and that's something that, of course, there's nothing wrong with that, because on the other side you have to trust, but that's something that I think is an advantage. But then the disadvantage for us is very much if we. It's also for hiring people. If people want to work for us, we first have to show to them literally how serious we are, and how incredibly awesome our tech stack is. Well, if you work for, there are some people that don't know anything about working for Google that want to work for Google. So we don't have that name yet.
I do notice that being able to have the use of name as the mother company, it does help with name recognition and with recruitment, for sure.
Yeah.
And I also believe that what you say is true about every client matters. Even for us, we still strive for that as well, of course, and I think we're very successful. But I definitely noticed that feeling you described when I tried to call Amazon, or I tried to call Google and get things done. It sometimes feels like a bit of a swamp, even though there are definitely people there who also are willing to help you, but it's one big person with a whole bunch of people behind them. You might have to ask him, and then that person asks him, and then they find the right team there, and then you're suddenly 10 layers deep into the organization, and you still don't have what you need, and you're 2 weeks further in terms of time. Exactly. So working with those cloud providers, I also feel like a number.
Yeah.
Just one of their many clients. And that's one of my nightmares. I never want to have that feeling for my customers. I want my clients to think that we do help them and that they can reach them. And that's maybe also one of the challenges when we keep growing for us as actually that we retain that flexibility and retain that customer.
That you stay small but grow as well. Basically.
Exactly. That we have the same support as if we were still small, but in the meantime we managed to keep growing. That's probably one of our future challenges.
Is it even possible?
I think it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in our whole DNA. I mean, almost all of us are also gamers. We know what makes gaming fun and that it needs to be good.
Yeah.
So in fact, whenever we need something from the large hyperscalers, we again realize how different it is, and that serves as a reminder to us how we should not be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let me pick a card, and it says, "What are your thoughts on the future of game hosting?" That's interesting.
That's a good question. Maybe it's good that I look a little bit back at how the game hosting used to be. You had game servers. They were not managed by the game developers. They were just thrown out in the wild, and people themselves were putting them online on servers in a co-location or on a dedicated server somewhere, and then you could play Unreal Tournament 99, for example. Now, a few years later, game companies started to take control of that online part. So they started working with companies such as ours to provide worldwide capacity. But it still was a game server model, a single monolithic process, like server.exe with a bunch of assets, and if lucky, it was stripped of all the client assets, so the server build would maybe be a few gigabytes. If unlucky, you were looking at a 40 gig build with all the graphical assets and everything built in, and you somehow have to work with that. What we do see now is that also in the game server design world, microservices have started to become a thing. So what I expect in the future, whether it makes business sense, business value sense, is I mean, to be determined. But I see a lot of game companies playing with clustered server processes. So you have, instead of one big server process, you have multiple smaller ones talking to each other. They could be still the same machine, they could be also spread over multiple machines, and maybe even over multiple data centers, depending on how the latency. And for us as a platform, it's going to be the challenge to support that and to anticipate that and work with our clients to figure out what would be the ideal solution for the future.
Yeah, just getting more chopped in pieces.
Yes, yeah.
It's about the same development that the internet has been through, actually. Internet's a little bit ahead, I think, on terms of hosting. Everything used to be a monolith, now microservices is a thing.
Yeah.
I see that happening as well in game servers, but I think what would be really cool, I don't know if it's going to happen, if you would chop it up even more to not being able to host a game as separate content or separate processes, but to host it as separate functions. I can see a future where a game you could compare it to serverless, but the game is distributed among different data centers, but maybe not even data centers. Maybe one part of your game is hosted by the electric car sitting in your street, which is charging. That would be cool, because if it's there charging, it has a lot of CPU, it might as well do something, and you have a wire stuck to it anyway, so why not transfer some data? And because it's in your street, you have really low latency, of course. That's really awesome. And it's also on the edge network that is connected to that car. At the same time, you could host a piece of that game in your browser or on your phone or anything with a CPU. And I'm not sure if that's going to happen. I'm hoping that something like that's going to happen. I know that I think it would be possible, but that's more like the far future. I think on short term it will be different processes.
Yes, that's probably the first
spread
step.
out. Yeah.
In the end, we can play the game from our fridge. I mean, that would be nice.
Of course, because we all have a CPU in our fridge.
Yeah, exactly.
But why?
Well, so it can order more beer when the beer is finished. And,
your fridge will automatically order beer.
Yeah, there are fridges out there who can do that already.
That's nice.
Yes. Good. Let's see what it is. All right. So, what are the physical limits? Is it possible to create bigger and better worlds? Would the Matrix be a realistic possibility in the future?
I think it's possible, but you need a very elaborate infrastructure for that. So, like I said earlier, if you could host parts of a game on different locations, but also if you could move those hosting pieces in real time,
on demand where needed.
Yeah, exactly. Then you can very well create incredibly large worlds that are maybe not too sure about it. Well, latency is always going to be a thing. But the latency problem is the only thing holding you back from making an infinitely great world. And by infinitely, I mean not infinite in a real sense, but infinite in the sense that you need to have enough CPU around. But if you are able to utilize every CPU in the world, I think you could make a world that is at least almost as big as the world itself. And that would be like the Matrix.
Yeah.
Yes.
So basically, we're now seeing the movement towards clustered servers. I think the end goal would be that it would be many different components who can scale independently up and down depending on where the player is in the world.
Yes.
And also where the player is in our real world in terms of location, and shift the resources around where needed to provide that truly Matrix-like experience.
Really, that Matrix feel.
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to happen at some point? That a world is going to be that big?
I think it will. I mean, maybe not in the near term, but with how compute and IT resources are developing and become so part of our daily lives. As mentioned, even your stupid fridge will have a computer and
so it's going to order the beer.
Order my beer. It's very important. Especially also with the newer technologies, IoT, 5G, that's also only going to evolve. There's going to be even more bandwidth available everywhere at a low latency. Maybe, I think my grandchildren, for them, it will be the new normal.
Yeah. Well, there could be like a second reality. That is the game. And actually, if you look at it, I grew up with Sherma games like Leisure Suit Larry, Hero's Quest. My personal favorite was Hero's Quest. It's a little less known, but those games were at those times they were great. But you had only 200.
6
yeah,
56.
Yeah, 56 exactly. If you were lucky, I used to play with 16 also. And if you see how far it's come now, games are absolutely beautiful compared to that. Very realistic.
But
even
back
at
then,
4K,
we thought that was beautiful.
Yes.
And we are still the generation that we've noticed the start of gaming.
Yeah.
And
I played Space Invaders. It was horrible if you look at it.
But compared to now, it's just mind blowing what's already become. And if we take the same amount of time, maybe another 20 years from now, it's hard to imagine what it could be. I mean, it could very well be that indeed you put your VR headset on top of you, you go lay down, and then you're in a whole new world where you can do everything except, well, computer generated instead of the real world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's going really fast. It's getting more and more immersive, and I think that also has there are going to be different hosting demands.
Yeah.
If you want to have an infinitely big game, if you have a game of Fortnite, for instance, you have 100 players per session.
Mm-hmm.
If all those players would be on maps that are connected to each other, that would give a really it would be a completely different feel, and you could do things there that you cannot even imagine.
I think maybe at one point in the future, you'll reach a point where if you're in a game, you don't realize it anymore that it's a game.
That is the matrix.
Yeah.
As a CTO, are you still programming yourself? Sometimes.
That's a hard question.
Or do you ever do it still?
Yes and no. When a company grows and you get more teams and more teams specialize doing their projects, then your tasks as a CTO also start shifting.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, it's a logical evolution, but you do miss sitting at tweaking all the buttons yourself. And of course, there will always be situations and time and place for that to do that. Just not as much as you would have hoped, I think. But then again comes the realization that your responsibilities have changed when the company is growing. So there's also other people who are very great at coding in your company who can also solve the same problem. And then you can focus as CTO as the things that really matter, like the big overarching problem, exploring new technologies, coming up with new ideas, how to improve your platform.
Yeah.
And then start working with your teams to do a POC, and then it will be a bit hands-on, but like
it's not like it used to.
Not like it used to be 5-10 years ago that you're writing code till 3 a.m. in the morning
for 18 hours a day.
Yeah.
For a week long. No, those days are. Well, I guess they're over. I absolutely still do it as a hobby. I turned my caps lock key into a push-to-talk button only last week, which are things I like to do. But now it's more shifting towards a mentoring way of programming. So I still write a lot of code, but the reason I do it is different. It's more to teach others, maybe. I like that because then you can help somebody grow. This is something else that I like to do. But still, sometimes I miss it a little bit, especially the very long sessions, and that you can just you go.
You be dedicated, focused on one thing for a whole day, no interruptions.
Actually, usually not this year then, but last year in November I usually go to a warm island. Last year it was Bali. To sit there for 2 weeks and only do coding, basically. I need that from time to time.
Coding at the beach.
Coding at the beach.
Drink.
Yeah. That's it. Alright.
Okay, let's hope Corona gets resolved quickly.
Yes.
So next time we can do this session in Bali.
Yeah. Let's do that.